So the title of the talk tonight is Next, More, and Better, the Three Carrots. So in this country, the US, they have an economic way to measure what they take to be progress. It's called the GDP, the gross domestic product. And it is a measure of how much the country produces as a whole. And the desire of the government is that that number increase every year. And people look at that number with great anticipation. And the sort of unspoken belief is that the more we produce, the faster that, the more stuff that we produce every year, we'll all be happier as a result, right? Well, maybe the stockholders in the companies that are producing all of that will be happier. But there have been a lot of studies that have shown that in this country, we're not a particularly happy country as a whole. So, it's worthy of looking at what this movement is of things will be brighter in the future somehow. I mean, that's the hope, that's the promise. In fact, that's what, the whole advertising industry is built on, that somehow you need this, you need this in order to be happy. Or if you don't have it, unless you have it, you are in, you'll find yourself in some unfortunate situation. And so that's the basis, to sort of instill this sense of lack in the present moment. But we have a solution. Here's the product that will solve that, or here's the service, or here's the social media content that will solve that for you. We have that. So it's dependent on first creating some sort of sense of lack, like what you have now is not quite enough. It could be better, right? So this is where the next, the more, the better comes in. But all of those are based on first creating a sense of not enough, right? Without the not enough, there's no movement to seek something more or better, right? If we're completely contented in this moment, what propels us to seek for something other than that? So in some sense, that whole advertising industry is based on creating some sort of discontent. I remember, maybe a few other people are old enough to remember this too, but it was the first ad on TV back in those days. I mean, this is probably, I don't know, 50, 60 years ago. And it was an ad that sort of shocked me even at the time. But it's illustrative of what we're talking about here. And the ad was a soap ad, Dial soap. And the ad went something like, aren't you glad you used Dial soap? Don't you wish everybody did? Right. So the assumption is that somehow if you were in the unfortunate position not to use this soap already, that you probably smelled bad and were offending people. So it created this sense of lack. But here we have the solution. Here's the soap to do it. I think before that, people just bought soap and didn't think too much about it. But it was something that intentionally, clearly, aggressively created this sense of lack, and then provided the solution for it. So on a broad economic scale, we can see how advertising and this sense of gross national product, as a measurement of future happiness works. But on a personal level, the same thing is functioning. We just call it hope. Okay? Hope that in the future, of course, there'll be something or something better, the next thing that'll happen that I'm looking forward to. And it can be anything. It can be almost everything. It can be, looking forward to having a meal with friends, or looking forward to the weekend, or looking forward to our retirement. Then, you know, that will be better than this moment. The next thing, you know, I'm reasonably happy now, but when I get that other job, or when I get the kitchen redone, or when I go on the next vacation, it's always the next thing that we look forward to. So even as something, relatively okay is happening in this moment, there can still be this sense of, yeah, that's okay, but it could be better. There's more possible, right? So we can eat the first few scoops of ice cream, and then it's like, yeah, but more would be better. Yeah. There's always that movement next. So in this sense of lack is the stick, and next, more, and better are the carrots. So that sense of lack is what drives this movement towards things improving in the future. And we can see it's sort of like the American dream, right? That has this idea that, the trajectory is always upward, that tomorrow will always be a brighter day. Things are always improving. And it's what every politician plays on, first making it sound like, well, everybody else that went before me, messed things up, but here I am, and I have the idea of how to make things better. So that's the movement, and the hope that each election cycle, people will say, yeah, I believe you, it will get better in the future. So there's this sort of built-in idea that somehow life will continue to improve in some way. That hope or that belief might get dashed at some point, but in the meantime, there's that underlying sense in this country. So there's the two components that we've been talking about: this sense of lack, and this hope, this movement of always in the future, of course, for the next thing, something more, something better. And we can see that in the world of commerce, but we can also see it in our individual lives, just on a everyday kind of basis. We can, we may not be motivated as spiritual people by conspicuous consumption anymore, but maybe there's still a sense of, well, I really want more comfort, more pleasure, more security, those kinds of feelings, which are entirely reasonable. Everybody likes comfort and pleasure and security. The only issue is holding it as a source of happiness and postponing it to the future when circumstances will allow that to happen. Right? So, even as we move into spirituality, then there's we can see in a lot of cases just this same sense of lack at work. If you were brought up in certain Western religions, there's this sense of lack playing out as original sin. What could be more lacking than that? Or it can it's seen in a lot of people, even if you're not particularly religious, it can be seen as a sense of unworthiness or sense of being somehow fundamentally flawed. These are obviously concepts, right? But the belief in them can be so strong that they don't feel like concepts. They just feel like, no, that's me. That's who I am. I am unworthy. I am flawed, right? How do I know? Because that's how I feel. Why do I feel that? Because that's what I keep telling myself. And I believe it. So if that's the sense that I don't have something now, I'm lacking something now, then the obvious next step is, well, how do I get it? What do I have to do? And so we turn to the next book or the next philosophy or the next guru or the next retreat or next YouTube video, or go looking for something to fix that lack, right? So whatever we do, whatever our answer to that question is, I don't have it now, how do I get it? Whatever the answer is to how do I get it is the direction of our search, right? So maybe I think that I need to meditate more. I need to sort of clean up my habits. I need to stop doing this and do more of that. I need to change my diet. I need to have a better set of beliefs, etc. Whatever direction that we think we need to go. But it's always out. It's always looking for something outside of ourselves that will fix that sense of lack, right? And so that movement outward is outward means always into the future, is always in this mode of next, more, better. How do I improve? How do I fix? How do I get more of what I want? And it's all founded on this sense of lack. But what nearly all of us fail to do is actually investigate this lack. What exactly is absent? Other than a believed thought. We sort of ignore that question and go running off in search of a holy grail for decades, if not lifetimes. I'm sure it's out there somewhere. I'm going to go find it. So we seek and seek and seek our hearts out, and whatever we find in that seeking will never be quite enough, because it's always on the outside. It's always looking outward, and whatever we find outward is always an experience or a concept. Those two things, and neither one of them have any staying power. Just because all experiences, whether whatever sensations or thoughts or feelings or hopes or dreams or all of that, always is impermanent, always comes and goes, always has a duration. And so if we're looking for our true nature, whatever that is, can't be something that comes and goes, right? If it was essential to our being, it would need to remain, right? If it suddenly exited and it was essential to our being, then we would cease to exist. So whatever it is that we truly are, must not be subject to limitations in time Right? So let's say if we believe that the enlightenment experience is a certain event after which we'll be eternally happy, of course. If we presume that, then we will be disappointed because that experience, no matter how explosively blissful, ecstatic that it may be, won't last. It will fade over time. It may take some time, but it will fade over time. And if we believe that that's what enlightenment is, we will think that we found it and then lost it. But that which is actually our true nature was present before that experience, during that experience, and even as that sense of that experience fades. It always is. It has to be. Right? We might also believe that in enlightenment or liberation is holding the right concept, getting our thought structure together, in the form of a well-crafted concept. So the question is, what happens to a concept when you're not thinking about it? Where does it exist? We can hopefully easily see that the concept is dependent on us remembering it back into existence over and over again. But when we're not remembering it, it doesn't exist anywhere. It requires our consciousness to bring it back into existence. And there might be scientists that say, well, there's some fundamental laws of nature that are sort of immutable, that are, the foundation of this entire creation. But those what we call laws of existence are really, humankind's best attempt to characterize or measure the patterns that we observe. The life, the creation that's happening isn't subservient to what we imagine those laws to be. And those laws always change as we learn more about them. They just happen to be our current best guess. So they're not anything that creation is founded on. Creation is happening, and those laws of nature are, scientists' way of trying to measure them, trying to make sense out of them. So they're not ultimately fundamental. Life is fundamental. Okay, so if what we truly are isn't an experience, because all experiences come and go, and it's not a concept, then is there anything that isn't subject to coming and going? We can see, as we pointed to at the outset, that awareness itself is, because it's not of the world of form, isn't bound by comings and goings. It's present for all comings and goings. It's not of the world of form. So that's why we can talk about formless awareness, spacious awareness. Right? It can also be called spirit, as long as we don't take that to be some sort of, external entity hovering around. Spirit just means not of the world of form, as in spirituality, which is theoretically what we're exploring. So this exploration into the nature of what we truly are is in the direction of formlessness. And sometimes it takes a lot of us a long time to realize that that's what it's really about. It's not just about having the right belief system, or burning incense, or having the right diet, or it's actually about our deepest nature and what that's about. So this awareness, if we say, let's just say that this awareness is what we are, and that's what I'm saying. You don't have to believe that, but we'll just hold that as a possibility, that awareness is our essential nature, the formlessness of that capacity that we all already have to be present for what's happening, to be knowingly present for whatever experience may present itself. So if that's the case, if that is already our nature, what do we have to do to attain it? Where do we have to go to find it? If that awareness is already our deepest nature, what diet will help us be more worthy of it? What austerities would be useful in recognizing what we already are? And what beliefs are necessary to discover that what we truly are is beyond belief? The challenge here, it's very much like the challenge a fish has if it's made up its mind that it needs to look for water, and it can spend its entire life looking for water, hearing about the wondrous life-giving qualities of water, and wondering how to go about it. And we as humans are very much in that same situations. We miss it because of its ever-presence. We miss it because it's never absent. We miss it because it's so much a part of our everyday experience that we just take it for granted. It's a little like breathing. We can become aware of the breath when we think about it, when we meditate on the breath, when we notice the body's movement with the breath, when we get out of breath, so we can notice it at times, but most of the time we aren't paying any attention to it. It's just happening. We just take it for granted. It's always there. Awareness is like that, only more subtly. There's no physical component of it. It's just, there's no particular attributes of it other than this presence and the capacity of knowingness. So that's the formless nature of awareness. It is unique in that sense. Everything else that we can experience has form. So we can talk about that, and people can even hear that as our already existing nature. And often people say, "No, that can't be true." It can't be something that I already am. I mean, not with these faults and my history, and not me. And so we go on seeking. Right? Seeking out of a sense of lack. Not me, not now, not like this, not in this condition. I'm not worthy. I'm somehow flawed. Right? Sense of lack. Right? And our resolution for sense of lack is the next, the more better. I'm going to go looking for it. And we move outward. We deny what's already present, inevitably present, out of a belief. That's the power of belief, that belief is so convinced. I mean, it is being convinced, right? That's what a belief is. So, but the mind has the power to convince itself that what we truly are isn't what we truly are. That's the power of it. So we deny that and go looking elsewhere. So when we were first creating a retreat center here, I mean, it's called Wellbeing Retreat Center now, but originally our one of our original names that we were considering was A Last Resort. And the reason for it was that we didn't think this kind of teaching would appeal to anyone, except if they had tried everything else. And as a last resort, we were willing to consider awareness to be their true nature. Right? Before that, we keep trying to attain some sense of permanent peace and contentment, fulfillment through acquiring things, right? Acquiring experiences, acquiring, the right beliefs. But until we are willing to see that all of those come up short, that desire to attain something in the future is always met by frustration, right? Frustration, disappointment. Okay. So we can, frustration and disappointment, we can be upset naturally, but I see those as forms of grace. It's life telling us that we're on the wrong track. We're looking somewhere where fulfillment can't be found. And life is kind enough to cause us discomfort, right? As a way of redirecting our attention. So the Buddha called this sense of unsatisfactoriness dukkha, which is often, that's a Sanskrit word, but it's often translated as suffering. But it more accurately means sort of unsatisfactoriness, right? Something not quite right. It's a little like having a pebble in your shoe. It's sort of like, you can still walk around, but it's sort of, it gets your attention and you can ignore it sometimes, but there's an underlying feeling that something's not quite right. So this is really the sense of lack somehow. Maybe sometimes it can really rear its head up and push us into despair, depression. But often it's just sort of a background level of anxiety. But either way, it's sort of life's drawing our attention to something that's not quite in alignment with life. So that's the generosity of life. It's very patient that way, willing to offer us as many doses of unsatisfactoriness as we need to be able to see, just to change our direction, change what we're looking from. Most of the time we're looking at, right? We never really consider where we're looking from. So we can seek and seek for a long, long time before we ever wonder who it is that's doing all this seeking, what that is, who or what is doing all that. We never ask that question if our focus remains on what's next, what's more, what's better, because that's always in the future and it's always out. Right? So this question of where are we looking from? We might, as proof that, let's say, peace isn't currently available to us. You might say that we have a busy mind. Where's the peace? Deny that possibility in the present moment. But, that's worthy of investigation. We could look at that sense of lack more closely. I mean, we could ask the question, for example, is peace always absent, or is it just sometimes absent? If everything is going well, is there a sense of relative peace? Then, other times, not so much. Okay. So what are the conditions that cause us to feel peaceful in one circumstance and not another? And we can think, well, it's the circumstance that cause us to feel that way. But if we look a little deeper than that, perhaps we can see that it's not so much the circumstance as what we tell ourselves about the circumstance. In other words, what we believe should be happening or shouldn't be happening, what I like, what I don't like, what I want, what I don't want, right? That very personal sense of me and what I want, right? So perhaps we can see it has much more to do with the belief of how we're looking at the circumstances rather than the circumstances themselves. So it's a little bit like being in the eye of the hurricane. If we're able to view what's happening from awareness, it's somewhat like being in just that eye of the storm. Chaos swirling about, but in the center, quiet. When I was younger, they lived in the Northeast, and a hurricane made its way all the way up there, and we lived near the coast. And the eye of the hurricane actually came right over where I lived, and it was, 70, 80 mile an hour winds. It wasn't, big hurricane, maybe 90, 100, I don't know, but it was, pretty violent storm. And then as the eye passed over where we lived, things got very quiet, and actually went out in a small boat and tooled around the bay for 45 minutes while the eye came over. Everything was completely calm, glassy, calm water. And then gradually the wind started to pick up again, and then the other side of the storm passed over and the winds went back up to, whatever they were. So what we're talking about, looking from awareness, is like being in the eyes of the storm, quiet, and yet all around there can be a lot going on. Right? So it depends on what we're looking at and what we're looking from. If what we're looking from is quiet, then there's peace. If we can find that place of awareness, even in the midst of the storm. We can find that place of peace. So as we go seeking, we can see this sense of lack as the stick and the next more better as the carrots, right? So the sense of lack is what drives us towards the seeking. The seeking will continue until perhaps we exhaust ourselves or frustrate ourselves or just pause long enough to notice what has been present all along. Been present as the awareness that was watching. So even if there is an enlightenment experience, normally there's an experience that coincides, it's happening concurrent with the recognition of our true nature. It doesn't have to be explosive, it can be quiet, or it can be mind-blowing. It doesn't actually matter. The important thing is to notice what our true nature actually is. To the extent that even when that whole dynamic of the experience fades, the recognition doesn't. The recognition of what we truly are isn't ecstatic. It's not a high state. If it was a high state, it would be subject to coming and going, right? As all experiences are. So this belief in the future as a brighter day tomorrow, we hold that same sense in spirituality. We hold this enlightenment will result in perpetual bliss, happily ever after, and it's not true. It's not true. Life is challenge. It has delights and it has challenges before awakening and after awakening. It also has delights and challenges. The difference is, before awakening, it feels like me, this body, this mind is being tossed around from one experience to the next. Feels vulnerable. With the recognition of what we truly are, it feels like those same events may be occurring, but who they are occurring to is no longer has that sense of vulnerability. It's not distant from, but it's also not subject to that level of turbulence. The events still happen, but there's a sense of those events all happen within the world of form, and what we truly are is spirit itself. It's not subject to the ups and downs of the world of form, just of a different dimension. So it depends on where we're looking from, not what we're looking at. So this identity shift may not happen overnight. It may not happen just because we recognize our true nature. That can be confusing. We can see that true nature is awareness, and yet it still feels like, yeah, but this is who I am, this body mind. And it may be that shift of identity to formless, spacious awareness may take some time. But as that's happening, there's also a sense of all is well. But as we learn to function more and more from that awareness, that functioning still happens through this body mind, still happens as this body mind, but it's not who we essentially are. We still get to participate fully in life, but the possibility is there to function without fear, simply because our essence is this formlessness. So this is, we can also get caught in this duality between formlessness and form. Like, which is it? Is it formless or is it form? And this is the basis for the, famous stanza in the Heart Sutra. Form is emptiness, emptiness is form. Right. So they're different. Awareness is different than the world of form in that it is, doesn't have the characteristics of duration, as we said, doesn't have attributes, whereas everything in the world of form does come and go ultimately. So they are different in that sense, but they're also not different. They're not different in the sense that everything in the world of form only ever appears within awareness, and therefore they're not essentially different. So when we recognize that, there's no longer a sense of chasing something in the future, hoping it will be somehow better than this moment, this experience, what life is presenting now. Because that's what life is always doing. It's always presenting now, however that arises. But if we recognize that our true nature is already pure, already complete, already fulfilled, then there's no sense of lack. Without the sense of lack, there's no seeking. No seeking, there's no imagining, well, the pot of gold is still in the future sometime. And we relax about it. Life is still left to be lived, and much more enjoyably, because we're not in this state of tension of always trying to move from lack to some fulfillment sometime, maybe in the future. Things feel complete in this moment, so there's no sense of waiting. So this, what we're talking about, is functioning as and through this body, yes, but beyond the world of beliefs, desire, and hope.